Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Coach 2023. I'm Liz Cresci, Strategic Growth Coach, and I'm super happy to be here with you today. So before we get started, just a reminder that Let's Coach 2023 is brought to you by Life Coach University. Come over to lifecoachuniversity.com and check us out. We have some amazing PIF, Pay It Forward talks. We have some fantastic coaches doing Let's Coach almost every day of the week. And we would love for you to join us. Most of what we do is on a Pay It Forward platform. And, we'd love for you to pay it forward and just spread the word and spread the love and smile at somebody you've never smiled at before. Say hello. All right. Well, today we have about 30 minutes and just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions or you have any comments or you'd like to join into the conversation, I would love to have you join me. So you can do that using the Q&A box, or if you feel up to it and would like to talk voice to voice, I'd love to have you just raise your hand and join in the conversation. So today I thought we would talk about change and the resistance to change. What are you resisting right now? And it's interesting because change is such a big topic, right? People, get very set in their ways and they get very mired in their habitual patterns, right? And that's natural. That's something that has always worked for us historically and evolutionarily. That's a word. Because if we always know that something is working right, or we're always on the same path, then it's a safety thing, right? I mean, back for our ancient ancestors, it was a safety thing. If you knew a certain watering hole had danger in it, you might avoid that, right? Or a certain path was always going to be safe. And you always stayed with what you knew. You didn't venture out into the unknown. And and maybe risk your life or risk something along those lines. And today, fast forward from prehistoric to the, 2023, change is still a big, and it's still a challenge for people. It really is. It's very hard. It can be very messy, and it's always a bit uncertain. So, but here's the thing. Even the Buddha recognized the power of change when he said, change is never painful. Only the resistance to change is painful. And that's really what we're talking about today, and how to try and avoid some of that pain and suffering for ourselves, because it is, the more we resist, what do they say? The more you resist, what you resist persists, right? Because it does. The harder you hold on to something, and it makes it much more painful and much more challenging. So what are you resisting? What was the last thing that you knew you needed to change and you didn't really do that? Or you started to change. This is the worst, I think. You start to change, you have every intention of changing, and then 2 weeks go by and you're like, oh, but I wanted to walk every day, or I wanted to read 10 chapters a day, or I wanted to put my resume out there for a new job, or move the furniture around in my bedroom, or whatever that change is that you're looking for in your life, because you fell back into a pattern. Habit is insidious, but also really good, because when you have a habit and it becomes automatic, then it takes some of your brain power that you were using for that, and you can use it in other places. And change itself is a process. It's not an event. It doesn't happen spontaneously or instantaneously. It happens slowly with some intentional thought behind it and action, right? Intentional thought and action. So I find, and I was thinking about this earlier today, what's interesting about change for me, and would love it if, if you wanted to chime in on some of your own experience. But I find that times I get myself turned around because I want change in certain ways. There's things that I want out of my life, out of my business, out of my relationships. And I think I know what that is. And I'm all gung-ho and every part of me is behind it. And then some time will go by. And if I'm not taking the action, I start to question. Well, I don't know. I don't feel strongly about that. Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want something else. Or I'll get to the point of, wow, I would really like this, but there's so much out there to want and to try and to explore. Like, am I limiting myself? So I can question myself out of it. And that's really where it comes down to building those good habits and those building, your discipline too, right? What are some ways to change ingrained habits, like habits that I've done forever? Oh, super good question. Thank you for asking that. It's a baby step thing, right? I think the biggest part that we don't do when we go to make these initial changes is we don't stop and understand what's the benefit to this habit. What is the benefit to the behavior that we're doing today? What's the positive outcome? Because we're creatures that tend to move away from pain and towards pleasure. So there is always a positive outcome. It might not be an acceptable outcome, but in some way it has a positive attribute to it. So if, for example, you have a habit of, I don't know, throwing your clothes on the floor instead of putting them in the laundry basket. And no matter how hard you try, you don't take them into the bathroom and pull out the drawer and drop them into the laundry basket. So we have to ask ourselves, and again, this is a hypothetical, right? What's the positive outcome of my habit of just dropping things on the floor next to my dresser? And I would say right off the top of my head, it's quick and easy, right? It takes some effort, albeit not much, but it takes some effort to bend over, scoop up my clothes, walk them down the hall into the bathroom, pull out the drawer and drop them in. I'm an immediate gratification person. I just want to be able to continue on because I got other things on my mind. And then I wake up, on Sundays and I look around and go, oh my God, I have to clean the house. So the immediate gratification, the positive to that is it allows me to continue on and be done with what I was doing. Okay, so I understand that about myself. So when I'm thinking about this habit that I want to change, I don't want to drop my clothes on the floor anymore. I want to be neat and tidy. So how can I make that work for myself? Instead of forcing me to do something that's not normal, comfortable, it doesn't answer the need for me to have that immediate, just keep moving with my life gratification. Maybe I need to look at how can I hack this change in the sense of making it work for me. So maybe that means that instead of using the laundry drawer in the bathroom down the hallway, I purchase a nice looking basket that has a little top on it and I can put it right next to my dresser so that it's almost harder to drop my clothes on the floor than it is to put it into the basket. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. When the question was, how do you change these ingrained habits? And there's always a payoff. So take a little time and try and figure out what that payoff is, because we'll never make change stick if we can't answer what the benefit is that we're getting out of our current behavior. And then it's not about the next behavior that you want to adopt. It's about the outcome. What is it that you want to accomplish by changing this habit? Now, habits are neutral, right? They're not good, they're not bad, they just are. Our judgment of them gives them more power, it gives them meaning. And meaning, as we've talked before, has a lot to do with the way we can, the way we respond to things, the way we conduct things in our lives. So the secret to change, even this is what Socrates said. And I love talking about these old timers, if you will, these ancient people, because if you think about it, we may be 2,000 years ahead of them on the timeline, but the issues are still the same. So Socrates said, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So in this case, getting rid of some ingrained habits, it's not about focusing on getting rid of that habit. It's about focusing on the future. What would changing that habit offer to you? What's the benefit to changing that habit? So you need to know what the benefit of the habit is, because you're getting a payoff. We get a payoff from everything we do. Every choice we make, every decision we make, there's always a benefit, a positive attribute. So what is that? And then what do you want the future to look like? And it has to work with you. And sometimes you even need to go so far as to ask why. Like, why is it important to you to not have a really messy room every week? It's not about the messy room per se. It's about, it just drags my energy down. It makes me spend time on something that when I could be spending time with my family, I have to now clean my space. I can't do my laundry as much, which means that I'm also, I then spend an entire day doing laundry instead of a little bit here and a little bit there. So it's overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. If I knew what kind of habit you were talking about, I could speak a little bit more towards that. But understanding that change is an iterative process, right? And that means that you're going to be constantly going back and doing those steps over and over again. I wish we could just say, oh, I've decided I'm going to change this today and have it stick. That would be amazing. But we don't work that way. And sometimes too, you have to know where that change is, the desire to change is coming from. Is that you really wanting the change? If you're committed to it because you really want it, then that's going to be different than if your spouse wants it, right? If my husband came in and said, Liz, stop throwing your clothes on the floor, I can't take it anymore. And I'm changing that because he's yelling at me, or I'm changing that because he's disappointed in me, that might have a different effect than if I'm changing that because it really means something to me. That's so good. I just wrote the Socrates quote on a Post-it note and put it on my whiteboard. Thank you. Oh, I'm so happy. You know me and my quotes. For me, they really drive the point home, and I'm happy to hear that because, Socrates was a smart guy. So getting back to change, the other part that I find goes hand in hand with the change for a lot of people, and much of the time, is the resistance to change has to do with future things that haven't happened, like the fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of judgment, right? Fear is a big thing in the human condition, and fear of failure, they actually have a word for fear of failure, like a diagnosable word for that, which was so shocking to me. And I think it's Oh, I should have wrote it down. I should have written it down. I'd have to look it up. It's like Italiaphobia or something. But isn't that crazy? So you just know you're not alone if that's how you feel. I've suffered from it. There's times I still do suffer from it. There's times I've had conversation with friends and colleagues and family, and there's always a tinge of fear of failure in there. And it's funny because people are like, well, I don't really have a fear of failure. I have a fear of success. I think they're one and the same. I think they have little nuances that are different, but I think they're one and the same. And it's a judgment thing, right? If we knew we were afraid to fail, we wouldn't walk. We certainly wouldn't talk. We probably couldn't even feed ourselves or dress ourselves, right? You don't have toddlers saying, oh, I fell down one time, I'm never going to try that again. I mean, and I'm breaking it down to the ridiculous for a reason, because if you really zoom out and look at some of this, what we do to ourselves, we do it honestly, right? But if you never try, you'll never know what your limits are, right? You fail fast and fail forward, fail often and fail forward. Like there are people out there who we would deem as success stories, and they didn't get where they are because they knew how to do it the first time they did it. Thomas Edison, loved to beat him to death with this, just talking about this all the time, is 10,000 times it took him to do the light bulb. If he gave up after one, or if he gave up after 1,000, or if he gave up after 9,999, we'd all be sitting in the dark. And that's what we do. Most of the time, if you were to chart things that you've tried, you are like one hair away from success. And people are like, can't do it. Nope, sorry. Albert Hubbard, the greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing that you will make one. If you're constantly afraid of making a mistake or constantly afraid of the outcome, it's going to keep you where you are. It's going to keep you from trying something new. Roy T. Bennett, the one who falls and gets up is stronger than the one who's never tried. Don't feel failure, but rather fear not trying. And that's really what's going to get us to change, is changing the way we think about trying, or we think about making something different and doing what's not habitual to us and trying something new. If you get excited about it and be like, oh, wow, let me see if this works. Go back to high school science, use the hypothesis. Well, geez, if I try getting myself a really nice basket and putting it next to my dresser where I change my clothes, I'll bet that I can make this work. And if it doesn't work, I'll give myself a couple of weeks. If that doesn't work, back to the drawing board. Let me figure out something else. There's nothing tied to my identity in that. It's just a trial and error. It's just a hypothesis. It's an experimentation. We've lost that along the way. If you watch young children, they experiment all the time. They try things. Why do you think we have, child proofing? Because they want to stick their forks in sockets and they want to stick, pebbles up their nose because they just want to see. Most of the time, if you ask them why they did it, they just, I want to see if it fit, or I wanted to see if it worked. Somehow we've lost that as we've grown up, and it's so hard, right? We wake up one day and realize that we need to make some changes. So the bottom line to making a change and to not, to, how do I want to say this? To not fearing that not fearing that failure, or not being resistant to change, is knowing what your outcome is. Having a really strong and well-formed outcome. When you're thinking about the change, what's the outcome that you want from that? Oh, I love this from one of our friends here on the talk today. I got myself a nice glass so I would enjoy drinking more water. I love that. You know why? Because I can resonate with that. I just got myself a nice hydro flask so that it keeps some ice cold and I can drink all day long. And you know what? It works. So it's about hacking yourself. And in that hack, knowing what the outcome is. Because a well-formed outcome, you need to know specifically and only in positive terms what it is you're looking for, and bring in as much of the sensory as you can, right? So it's not that I don't want to do X, Y, and Z anymore. It's I want to enjoy better health by drinking more water. And it's important to me to feel a sense of luxury. So I'm going to buy myself a really beautiful piece of crystal, because when I drink out of that, it makes me feel really good. So, excuse me, in our outcome, we make it very, very, very specific. And then we have to check, is it something that's in my control? Is it, they call it self-maintained, right? Do I need somebody else to be able to accomplish this? Because then that's not a great, well-formed outcome. If it relies on something or someone else besides you, it's going to make it very difficult to institute this change and to institute the result, right? So also, what's the context? When do I want this? And with whom do I want this? Getting very, very, very specific in this outcome. And this works for anything, whether you're changing a habit, whether you're creating a project for you to do, whatever it is that has an outcome to it, having it be well-formed will help. So again, super duper specific, positive terms. And if you can bring in any sensory feeling, hearing, seeing, touching, whatever. And then is it within your control? And when and where and with whom do you want this? Also, super important that tends to get left off is, what's the secondary gain here? What's the benefit that you receive from not accomplishing this outcome? Again, what's the benefit of the behavior you're doing? What do you get positively from not making this change? Or keeping things, what do you get for keeping things the way they are? And what would happen if you did accomplish this? How would that be? How would that change? So again, we're not looking at anything negative here. We're staying on the positive. So what's the positive behavior the positive from your current behavior? And what would you like to see from the future behavior? And with that, are there any resources that you need to accomplish this outcome? Our friend that bought themselves a really nice glass, that was the resource that they needed, right? Maybe it's, I need to have a good filtration system for my water. So whatever it is, is obtaining those resources within your control, or do you need to elicit somebody else? Again, it makes the outcome much more challenging if you have to elicit somebody else. How does this whole thing fit with you? When you think about the outcome, does it really work for you? If you just imagine yourself in that outcome and you want to know, Does it really fit for you? And then take it one step further. Does it fit for everyone else around you? Because oftentimes something that I want, maybe my spouse doesn't want, maybe my kids would find it difficult. Maybe my coworkers or my boss might not like the fact that, my outcome is to have his job, right? Or my outcome is to do more projects, and maybe they'll think that I'm trying to show them up. Whatever that changes, does it fit for you, truly fit for you and who your identity is? And does it fit for those around you? And almost last but not least, how would you rate your commitment to this? If you could rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to this change? No judgment, right? No judgment at all. This is your change. You can change or not change. But how committed are you to this? Because if you're not a 10 or a 9 or an 8, then maybe it's something you should reconsider and find a different outcome. If you come in at an 8, what would make it a 10? Really kind of jump in and look at this stuff. Like, how committed are you? Because if you're under an 8, you probably will do other things to sabotage yourself without trying. And then the final thing is, what's the first step and when are you going to take it? So going back to our friend who asked about changing some ingrained habits, if you could walk them through this outcome process, understand, what is the habit doing for you right now? And that's one of our outcome questions, right? What happens if you don't change this? What's the positive outcome? What's the positive from the current behavior? Really understanding that, and then getting super clear on what you would like it to be. And does it work for you? And does it work for those around you? And how committed are you to it? And in that, I would invite you to elicit some accountability. How are you going to hold yourself accountable? Can you bring, pull other people in to hold you accountable? Is that something that goes with that? It depends on what it is. So we are talking about change in June, in case you haven't noticed. So before I sign off, because we're getting towards the end of our time, let me just take another quick look at our Q&A. If I wait to be a 10, I think I'll make excuses. I have a tendency to want things to be perfect. That's a really good point. But when I asked you if you were a 10, are you an 8? How far along are you? And then you just ask yourself the question, what would make it a 10? I didn't say you had to be a 10, but in the moment, what would make it a 10? Because that's part of what you're going to strive for, right? In this change. And knowing, how will you know when you get it? And as somebody who's super visual, I have to put things up to remind me. I have to put them in my phone. I have to put some sticky notes around, but I also have to move them like the elf on the shelf, right? Because after a while, if you leave it in one place, like I will write my outcome out and I will write some key things that I want to happen on a sticky note. I'll put it on my mirror. Every so often I have to pick that up and move it to a different side of the mirror or put it in a different room, because it becomes part of the background noise to me, because I know that about myself. So I need to do that. I tell my husband too, like, hey, if you happen to see it and you want to move it, feel free. And he does that occasionally just to make me a little crazy. But it's all good. It's fun. So again, it's about knowing what's important to you and going for it. I really value these talks. I'm not sure how it happens, but it seems like whatever I join, it's exactly where I'm going through, and I needed the coaching. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And we all do. I speak for all the coaches in that regard, because that's what we're here for, right? We want to bring this to you, and knowing that the right people are on at the right time is super important. So I will leave you with two more quotes. John Maxwell, famous author, "You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret to your success is found in your daily routine." So big change, look at something small. Look at something in your daily routine. And Sadhguru, "When your mind is full of assumptions, conclusions, and beliefs, it has no penetration. It just repeats past impressions." So again, the assumptions, the conclusions, and the beliefs, these are things that the stories that we bring forward with us. So take some time, stop with the judgment. We all are going through it. You are just where you need to be. Try some of the outcome process. Take it one step at a time. And you're not going to make a major shift overnight. If you can just go 1% better, if you can change that 1% thing to help you steer your way out of some of those ingrained habits, that would be a success. I appreciate you joining me today. Again, my name is Liz Cresci. I am a strategic growth coach. You can find me over at thelegacyofgrowth.com. You can find me at Life Coach University. And you know what, we would love if you have specific topics and you don't want to necessarily bring it into a session, feel free to email us at hello@Life Coach University. Throw the question out. We're going to answer them for you. We have Ask a Coach TV. We can answer them for you and give you the recordings. So, reach out and please pay it forward. Tell somebody about us. Smile at somebody you haven't smiled at. And you know what? Recognize somebody that maybe you haven't seen before and just say hello, see them, and make them feel valued, because that's what we all want. Love you guys. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining.